Cops of Reddit, what has so far been the creepiest call you've ever had to respond to, and what happened? For some reason, the suicides always hit me the hardest. I had a good friend who killed himself in high school, so suicide is a touchy thing not just for everyone but especially for those with personal experience. I've seen 3 suicides by gun, 2 hangings, and a handful that did it intentionally by using drugs of some sort or other methods. Long story short, the guy shot himself in his garage with a .357 Magnum. Thankfully, I have a pretty strong stomach because of experience, but I believe I accidentally stepped on a piece of his eye. When I cleared the call, I went straight to the locker room and cleaned the bottom of my boots for a good 40 minutes. I repeated the cleaning process at home, too. Now, sure, that's not exactly creepy, just disturbing. But here's this one. We got a call from the hotel off the interstate. Employees went to clean a room and found a note on the bathroom door, which was closed and locked. It read, "Don't come in. Call 911. So, the front desk did just that. We get there, and she shows us the room. We try knocking on the bathroom door. No answer. We weren't even sure if there was someone in there or not. The on-site manager told us we were allowed to force entry into the bathroom. She was concerned because none of the employees ever remembered the guest checking out. My partner got the door open, and it was like something off of a horror movie. The guy was in the tub, completely naked. Knife on the floor, just next to the tub. Cuts on his wrists, and the absolute worst thing was the blood inside of the tub. I've never seen so much blood in my 10+ year career. His face was pale white, and it appeared as he was frowning. He didn't appear to be breathing. Call a medic. My partner says. I just look at him and say, no. Dude's dead. I'm not touching him. You can check if you want, but we need to get our supervisor, an EVT, and detective here. I could recognize a dead guy when I saw one. I get the manager, who is having a legit panic attack, to calm down and head back down to the desk while we deal with this. Called for another car and told dispatch to contact our evidence technicians and a detective, when I heard my partner scream and exclaim, "Oh shit." I run back over there, and he's wide-eyed, staring at the body. He just moved. He's alive, man. He moved. What are you talking about? He has a pulse. It's faint as hell, but he has it. His leg moved under the water when I tried checking for it. Sure enough, I put on my big boy undies and could barely feel a pulse on this guy. Medic called, and they rushed him to the ER. Turned out he did the cutting just minutes before the cleaning maid found the note, so surprisingly he barely lived. He lived, but it wasn't pretty. He cut his wrists while he was bathing. A majority of what looked like blood was indeed blood, but it was mixed in with water, which made it look like there was a lot more blood than what he actually spilled. And in all honesty, cutting your wrists isn't a great way to off yourself. He thinks he was bleeding for about 10 or 15 minutes before he started to go to sleep, and he would have been fine for a little longer as long as he got help. It depends on a lot of other circumstances. And I know, I should have been more proactive in checking for signs of life. It was irresponsible for me to not check sooner. In many instances, it's fairly easy to spot a corpse when you have one, but this one really tricked us, and we learned from that. Thankfully, my partner did while I stepped out, and I was not intending to stop him from doing so. My tone was a bit more cynical. Dude looks dead. I really don't think we need a medic. You can check him, but I don't want to. And in our defense, he really did appear to be 100% dead. No chest movement at all, pale skin. It looked like he could have been there for at least hours. But as I said, I was wrong, and I acknowledge that. Sometimes you forget that your experience and training aren't objective, and still being relatively new then, it was a learning experience for me. You can bet that from there on, we both were more cautious. Got a report of a missing husband. He told his wife and family of 6 children that he was going to get his tires changed, but never returned, and this was 12 hours ago. They had purchased another house in a neighboring community, and the relationship with the wife was under pressure, so the wife assumed he was staying at the other house and claimed he would never kill himself. The strange thing about this report, though, was that he emptied his personal bank account into his wife's this morning as well. The wife explained this off, saying that they recently had a fight about finances, and he agreed that he was bad at money and maybe they should just have a joint account that she controls. On a hunch, I asked his 14-year-old boy if there were any areas in the mountains nearby that his father enjoyed going, and the son identified a road about 10 miles away. It was nearing midnight, but I decided to drive to the top of this old and abandoned Forest Service road. As I drove through the snow and started to climb the road, I felt a gut feeling that I would 100% find this guy up there either thinking about or already acted out a suicide. The snow-laid gravel road had some sign of travel but no real indication of how fresh the vehicle tracks could be. After an hour of travel, I was honestly surprised that I did not find his black truck as I reached the top of the road. I spent the drive back down thinking about gut feelings and how they are unreliable, but I somehow felt different about this one. As I traveled up the road, I noticed over a dozen smaller roads branching off, but they were not mapped, and I had already spent too much time on a single occurrence in a busy city with too few police officers. Nonetheless, I decided to check a single of these secondary roads, and about 3/4s of the way down, I picked a road at random to check, and sure enough, my headlights lit up the back end of a black truck about 100 yards past the first corner. Even if I hadn't memorized the license plate beforehand, I wouldn't have had to run it, it was clearly his. I radioed that I had found the truck, parked my vehicle, and traveled 20 feet to his truck with my heart beating like I was doing it at a sprint rather than a normal walk. What I found inside was a mess of brains and blood caused by a self-inflicted shotgun wound under the chin. There was just something about that gut feeling while traveling this abandoned and quiet mountain road, followed by a sense of being tricked by the gut feeling, then finding out it was true by discovering such a gruesome scene, having to wait 3 hours next to his truck waiting for body removal, and then to end it all by having to go to the family who was expecting good news to deliver to them the worst news possible. That makes me feel creeped out to this day. I got a call that there was an abandoned truck on the highway. I was only a mile or two away, so I headed there. It was in the middle of these curves, with a mountain wall on one side, and a drop-off to a creek on the other side. It was dark, probably around midnight. I pull up, and there it is. An old 50s pickup truck. Light blue. Sitting there. I have no backup. I have no idea where the driver is. I walk up, gun out, inhaling the strong alcohol vapors. No one to be found. I call for a tow truck. Meanwhile, I have to wait, in the dark, in the middle of blind curves, with no idea where the driver is or why he left it. My adrenaline was at an all-time high for sure. This may be quite tame compared to other posts, but it's the creepiest for me so far. An elderly woman had called in reporting that a man carrying a drawstring bag was walking around her and her husband's property. She described the man as walking like a zombie and was looking down towards the ground the entire time. She wasn't able to tell if the man was attempting to break in or not. My partner and I were about 15 minutes away when the call came in from dispatch. When we were about halfway there, the elderly woman reported that her husband, who was downstairs watching the front yard with a shotgun in hand by the front door, told her that he watched the trespasser disappear into a cornfield across the street from their house. My partner and I quickly searched the area around the cornfield and went to the house. As I took down some information from both the husband and wife, my partner searched the property for any signs of tampering but found nothing. We then patrolled the area for 10 minutes, hoping to find the man, but we didn't. 2 adults reported missing, parents of 2 adult children, 1 male, 1 female. Alerts are in place for the missing people's credit cards. The father's credit card hits on a purchase at a jewelry store where an engagement ring was purchased. It leads us to the son who made the purchase of the ring. Son is questioned and confessed to killing both parents and burying them in shallow graves. The son led us to the gravesite, and we began the process of recovery. Both mom and dad had black garbage bags over their heads being held in place by duct tape around their necks. The sight of the bodies, especially their faces, once the bags were removed and the smell is something I'll never forget. I was called out to negotiate with a 17-year-old female who had barricaded herself in a bathroom with multiple knives and scissors. She'd done it right too. SWAT ended up going through the sheetrock wall. She wouldn't talk with me at all but had multiple graphic conversations with her mother, who committed suicide 3 years earlier, and her dad, who's serving lots of years in prison for sexually abusing her. When SWAT pulled her out, she had completed multiple circumcisions on herself with the scissors, completely cut her nipples off, and had sodomized herself multiple times with multiple steak knives. The kicker was, she was talking the whole time, and her tone or volume never changed. The pain never bothered her. Or, more likely, she never felt it. The human mind is scary. Man, this was probably 2010, 2011. I was really new. A call came in as an unknown problem. Basically, the 911 was so bad, even dispatch didn't know what to call it. Turned out, this guy had just murdered his stepfather and then walked to his grandparents' house to kill them as well. He stabbed his grandmother through the eye with a Rambo-style Bowie knife, one that had the compass in the pommel of the handle. He missed her brain by about 1/8 of an inch, so she did not die. Instead, she came running out of the house when we got there, a knife sticking out of her eye, and the compass was spinning around because she was moving. My brain literally went, "That's not real," and I went past her, along with several other cops, before the sergeant was like, "What are you guys doing?" She survived. We caught the guy in a stroke of pure luck. The elderly woman with a massive hunting knife for an eye, definitely the creepiest thing I can remember seeing. I stopped a 25-year-old Asian male from entering the east executive entrance of the White House. He had slit his wrists and neck prior to his arrival, but not deep enough to hit major blood vessels. He told me that he was a secret agent working for J. Edgar Hoover and that he was 60 years old. He said he had important information to pass to President Obama. I ended up having to detain him, stop the bleeding and then involuntarily commit him. Turned out to be a local college kid, going through some mental health issues. I've field interviewed hundreds of White House callers, but this kid took the cake. Detention officer at a local jail here. We had a guy get brought in about 2 a.m. one night who we immediately knew was about to give us a fun time based on the way he was moving, quickly snapping the head back and forth, looking all over the room, etc. One of my coworkers and I stay with the booking officer to help her out when the shit inevitably hits the fan. The guy keeps rambling on throughout the whole process, parts of his speech are understandable, but most of it is gibberish. At one point, he looks up at my coworker and says, "Would you blame me for it?" Trying to keep the guy calm, my coworker tells him, "Nah, man, no one can blame you." For whatever reason, this set the guy off. He leaps off the bench, and we both push him back down. My coworker is trying to get handcuffs on his other wrist. He was already handcuffed by one hand to the bench, and I'm holding him against the wall with every bit of strength I have. This guy was strong. I swear the bench was about to come up off the concrete when he first leapt at us. Once my coworker gets handcuffs on him, we take a step back. The guy throws his head back, eyes rolled all the way back, and lets out an inhuman scream that I've only heard in movies about demon possession. He then moves his head as if he's looking around the room, but still with his eyes rolled into the back of his head and spouts off more nonsense. I'm not Catholic, but I was very tempted to cross myself. The screaming, head throwing back, and eye rolling continue on for about 45 minutes. Every so often, he'd come back to reality and talk to us like a normal person for a moment and then go back into crazy mode.